Hi there, and welcome to this presentation on how to create a quiet corner in your home for your child. My name is Lindsay Castleman, and I am a homeschooling mom of 7 years and also a homeschool mentor. I am certified as a teacher, and I'm head of curriculum at Schoolio Learning. And I have always had a special interest in social emotional learning and teaching our kids those skills. So over the years, I've developed a lot of content and programming for my own kids and through Schoolio, which I am excited to share a little of with you right now. So I have a tendency to talk too much, especially on these pre-recorded things. So I need to keep this to the 20-ish minute time limit. So I will try to be as succinct as possible. Please bear with me. So here is our mini agenda. We're going to briefly talk about why you would want to make a quiet corner in your home for your child, how to design it, how to set up some rules for it, and the ideas of what those rules could be. And then we'll talk about some recommendations on how to use your space. And of course, I have some freebies for you to take home at the end. So let's get started. So why would you want to create a quiet corner in your home? I won't linger here too long because if you're watching this video, you probably already know that you want one. So let's just chat about it quickly. So a quiet corner creates a designated space in your home where your kids or even yourself can go to and have space to feel big feelings, to calm down, to emotionally regulate, reset, or reduce stimulation. So we know everyone needs a break sometimes, right? And especially for our kids who may have unique needs, overstimulation can lead to emotional dysregulation. So one thing we know from the science of learning is that a dysregulated person cannot learn. They just can't. So an autistic who is mid-meltdown, or an ADHDer that's dissociated, or anyone who is feeling anxious or stressed just simply cannot learn. So pushing through with your academics or trying to teach anxiety management or emotional regulation skills in those moments is just not going to happen. So of course, we want to always be modeling and teaching good management and coping strategies. And if you think of it, you may have a space in your home where you know that you can go when you need a break. So maybe you grab a coffee and you sit at the kitchen table for a few minutes. Maybe you hide in the pantry with the secret mom-only cookies that no one else knows about. But as an adult, you have the skills to notice when you need to step away from a situation and take some space for yourself. And you know where you can go in your home to get that space. But kids don't know that, right? They're still learning. They're still learning about all their big emotions and how to handle them. So they need to learn, and especially if there's other children in the house, that a designated quiet space is there for them to go and process those big feelings or to take that moment and that space that they need. So folks always ask me why they can't just go to their room, because that's assuming they don't share a room, is sort of their private personal space. And the basic answer is that maybe we as adults, when we want space, we often want to be alone, and that's fine and normal, but we know how to manage our emotions for the most part if we get the space and time to process. And often the space we need is from those little people in the house, to be honest. So we like to be alone and step back for that space and be sometimes a little isolated, but kids are different. Because they're just learning how to process their big emotions, and they don't even always know how to identify what's happening, they very likely still need your help while in the quiet corner to do that work. And even if they don't need your help, even if they want to be alone, we don't want them to feel disconnected or isolated or like they're being punished for needing that emotional break. We want them to be very comfortable to say when they need it and to not be isolated from the people who are there to help them through these things. So that was not very short, but let's carry on. So let's get right into it. So how do you actually build your space? So despite the name of Quiet Corner that I gave it, it doesn't have to be a literal corner. You can see here on the slide is a picture of our Quiet Corner that we had when my kids were small. Sorry for the low quality photos. This was quite a few years ago. I will not mention exactly how many and date myself, but it was taken with an iPhone 4. That's all I'll say. So we did have a quiet corner, and we used our corner, and it was really, really helpful, which is sort of why I'm here today. So we had an actual corner, and we put ours in the playroom. So this is where all of the toys and all of our school and crafts and all that sort of stuff took place. The reason I chose this spot was because it was still like part of the action, because I have one FOMO baby, fear of missing out, if you don't know what that is, who wouldn't take the space they need if it meant being away and not knowing what was going on in the rest of the house. But it was also separate enough in itself. So what we did was we used a thick, big comforter and folded it up a few times as the bottom, because the room had hard floors. And then I used an old bed rail, the kind that when you transition your kid from crib to bed, there's those like bed rails you can put on so that they don't fall out. We used an old one of those, and it worked perfectly to really like divide the space and make it clear that this was a separate space without being isolating, and they could get in and out without having to move anything. So it was really useful. And then comfiness, I mentioned the comforter on the floor. Comfiness is a must. You want this to be like a calm, relaxing space. And remember, it's not a punishment space. So it's not a tiny jail. We want this to be a welcoming, inviting, calming place. So pillows, blankets, stuffed animals, whatever your kids are into are all great additions. I don't know if you can tell from the picture, but I chose a variety of pillows that offer different stimuli. So there's that one of those reversible sequin pillows. And then I got one that was really, really soft. And I got one that was more of like a satin. And also, if your child likes weighted items, like a weighted blanket or a weighted lap pad or a vest even, it's great to either have those in the corner or have them nearby so they can sort of like grab it on their way to the corner if that's something that you find useful for them. So now you have your comfy, cozy space ready. There's some nice what would you call it, tactile stimuli, sensory stuff in there. And you want to add some helpful tools as well for your child. So this is where we are helping them learn how to emotionally regulate by providing the tools up front. So we might know as adults that if I'm feeling anxious, I'm going to take a hair elastic with me because I'm going to fiddle with that. So I know what tool I need, and I can think in advance of an anxious situation and know what I want to bring with me. Kids need our guidance at this time with that sort of thing. So we think of the tools, and that means that you may test, trial and error a bunch of tools and before you find their thing that they like. But having those there for them, because once your kid hits that point of overwhelm or that emotional dysregulation, if you say, would you like a fidget? They don't know. And they don't know what one, and they can't make those sorts of decisions. So we have all that stuff ready for them in the quiet corner in advance. So we just had like a bucket from the dollar store that sat in the corner of the quiet space. And hold on, I forgot to switch my slide. There we go. So now you can see the picture. So there's a bucket that sat in the corner of the quiet space. So it kept things sort of tidy in a way, because you don't want the space to be a big mess, because that can be overwhelming from a sensory standpoint as well. But it's also very easy to access. So our bucket included a little kit with a variety of fidgets, like a tangle, a stress ball. There's tons of them, and you can get most of them at the dollar store. They don't have to be expensive. If you already know what your kids' favorites are, then get seconds and put them in there and they stay in the quiet corner. And then we also had a couple like easy to read board books as the kids were able to read on their own independently, or even like just a book they're really familiar with. They could look at the pictures, but they already know the story. So for my kids, Grumpy Bird by Jeremy Tankard was the like number one emotional regulating book that helped us. What else did we have in there? We had markers and paper so they could draw. We had a small puzzle. These are all like quiet activities that are not too overly stimulating for your child, because they don't want to sit and do nothing and just like think thoughts, which an adult might want to do, but they need something to do, especially something with their hands, but something that is quiet and an independent reset activity. So the image here you can see is a homemade book called Calm Down Strategies, which we did together during a lesson at an earlier point. So we're not going to try to think of calm down strategies when we're dysregulated. This is going to be an earlier, maybe part of your homeschooling, is to do SEL, so social emotional learning. If you have a unit, I will shamelessly plug the Schoolio Thoughts and Feelings unit, which is where this book came from. But this little book is specifically the calm down strategies they have thought of for themselves in advance. So that's the nice thing about the homemade version, is that it's tailored, right? It's custom, specifically what your kids thought at a time of calm would help them at a time of dysregulation. And then we have, we also did like posters on the wall, like low down. So if they were sitting in the quiet corner on the floor, the posters were at eye height. And now you could do this or not do this, and to what extent really will depend on your child. Some kids, overly visually stimulating wall, like with lots of colors and pictures and stuff, won't be a calming feature for them. So you don't want to do too many. That's totally, again, up to your child. But an emotions board, which you can see on the slide with the aliens at the bottom there, is really helpful for either like really young kids that are still learning how to identify and name their feelings, or for really any child that in a state of dysregulation, such as a meltdown, is maybe unable to communicate with you how they're feeling. So an emotions board lets them look at the pictures visually, even if they can't read the words, and show you what they're feeling with a simple point, versus having to verbalize in that moment. So the other poster that we found the most valuable in our quiet corner is the calm down strategies. So this is similar to the book, only it's not customized. It's got just a bunch of ideas for things that are sort of relaxing, independent reset. So it helps them if they're having trouble accessing their memory at that time of dysregulation. It's like a list. They can just be like, I want to do this one, and then go and do it. Okay, so that is the basics of how you actually set up your quiet corner. And really, like, remember, just like with homeschooling, customizable. That is the beauty, right? The beauty of homeschooling, the beauty of building your own quiet corner that's not in a classroom, is that you make it perfectly match the needs of your learners, of your kids. So feel free, like, take what works for you, leave what doesn't, because you got to make the perfect setup for your kids. And a lot of things, if you've never done this sort of thing before, will be trial and error. You know, you might put up a bunch of posters because you think it will help them, and then it might be too overwhelming and you end up with just one or two that are the ones they actually use. That's actually literally what happened to us. I did like nice posters around the whole walls, and then we ended up, after using it for a bit of time, realizing that 80% of them were never used, So we took them down to make the space quieter and just left up the ones that we used the most. So briefly, let's talk about rules for the quiet corner. So rules, you have to set your own rules for the quiet space. And remember that flexibility is key. So you're going to give yourself permission to change the rules as you go. And you should talk to your kids about the quiet corner, what it is, why we're building it. Definitely if they want to be a part of the building process and have input, that's awesome. I took my kids with me to IKEA and let them pick the pillows when we were doing that tactile sensory choices. So if they want to be involved in making it, that's fantastic. Even if they don't and you make it, that's also fine. But you want to talk to them about it, why you made it, what its purpose is, and what the rules are before anyone needs it. So before we're in a state of emotional dysregulation, or we're having a meltdown, or we're having a fight, before emotions run high, we're going to talk about the quiet corner and how you use it. So you're going to make your rules unique for your children and your family. But here are some sort of basics to get you started. So you make sure that everyone in the household knows the quiet space rules. And some ideas are that these are the rules we had, that you can opt to go to the quiet space at any time. So sometimes as parents, we don't see the overwhelm building, especially a lot of our kids are really good at sort of masking that. And you might be thinking that everything's going perfectly fine. You're doing math or something like that. And then boom, meltdown, right? But that's been building over time. So I always like to say to the kids, that you can go anytime to the quiet space because I don't know always what's happening inside of you. So that's our, you can opt in anytime rule. What other rules did we have?
We had a rule that if you are in the quiet space, everyone leaves you alone. So nobody bugs you. Nobody asks you any questions. Nobody speaks to you, and you have to reach out if you want connection or if you want help. So that won't work for every child. So like I say, tailor, but that's what worked for my kids, was that 90% of the time when they went to the quiet corner, they wanted to be left alone. And if I said, do you want a drink? Do you need a hug? that would bother them. So our rule was that once you go to the quiet corner, everyone will leave you alone. You're still a part of the action. You're still a part of the space, but nobody's going to bug you. And if you need something, if you want a glass of water, if you want a hug, if you want to talk about how you're feeling, we're 100% here. You just need to say the word and we'll be there. And that's what worked for us. We also had a no screens in the quiet space rule. I know some children use their screens to regulate, so that's totally your call. For us, just allowing screens in the quiet corner just meant that we always wanted to be in the quiet corner because we got our screens there. So we had a no screens in the quiet corner rule, but that's, again, totally your call. And then our last rule was that you can stay in the quiet corner for as long as you need to. We did have to tweak this rule a little bit because sometimes one wanted to stay in the quiet corner all afternoon because I don't know, they just liked it in there, especially when it was new and novel. But the other one wanted to use it too because I have two kids. So you might have to tweak that a little bit, or you just, you talk to them if they've been in there a while. As long as you don't have a nobody bugs me rule, you could say how are you feeling? Do you want to come out of the quiet corner? Do you want to have a talk about what led you to the quiet corner? Something like that to sort of encourage them to give it up for someone else. Or maybe you need a quiet corner for every person in your household if you are a family of introverts like we are. But yeah, so that's totally up to you to create and enforce those rules as think about it in advance and think what you think will work. Just like everything with homeschooling, we make a plan based on what we think will work. And then we adjust that plan as we go, and reality shows us what will actually work. So it's the same thing. Yeah. And then lastly, I just put use of the quiet corner. So this is basically that you want to see the quiet corner in use, and you want, as a parent, to be able to learn from the experiences of the children going to the quiet corner. So encourage them to use it whenever they want. They don't have to only go there when they're emotionally dysregulated, or when they're really upset or when they're having a meltdown. Remember that all social emotional learning strategies need to be practiced and learned in a time of calm. So like I mentioned at the beginning, when you are in a state of dysregulation, you cannot learn. So we need to teach our kids the strategies, the practice, and practice those strategies and build them into habits when they are calm. Because by it being like a well-practiced habit formed, that's the only way they can access those tools when they are actually in a meltdown or, in a rage or really anxious or whatever emotional dysregulation is happening. They can access those strategies and tools if they have learned and practiced them in a state of calm. So that was a really long way to say that you should let them use the quiet corner anytime they want, and you should encourage that. And then you're practicing and you're habit building. And it's also really great to model the use of that space. And that doesn't mean that you have to sit in the kitty quiet corner on the floor and color. It means more that you don't have to pretend like everything is fine with you all the time emotionally, right? It's okay to say to your kids, guys, I'm getting overwhelmed. I need a little break. So my quiet corner is the kitchen table, and I just need 5-10 minutes by myself, with my coffee, and I just need to reset. And that's actually really great role modeling for them to have the emotional intelligence to recognize when you need a break before you get dysregulated and you have like an angry outburst or whatever your anxiety gets really high, whatever your thing is. We all have our things. But to be able to recognize it in advance and to verbalize what strategy you're going to take to your kids really helps them learn that it's okay to say that, and it's healthy it's okay to feel overwhelmed, and it's healthy to verbalize that. And these are strategies that get used. So you're modeling all three of those things in that moment. And you're helping yourself because you're taking a break when you need it. So remember, moms especially, take a break when you need it. If you won't do it for yourself, do it to be a good model for your kids. And yeah, that's basically that. I'm a smidgy over my 20 minutes. So yeah, the last thing is freebies. So I have 2 of the wall posters that I mentioned, the social emotional learning materials. Let me think. Emotions board. That's the word. Sorry. It's an emotions board, so they can pick out what emotion they're feeling. And then also the calm down strategies list, so they can look and say, I want to try coloring, or I want to try puzzle, or I want to try drink of water. And then you can help them get that set up if they need help. They're really good tools for kids, especially if they're nonverbal or nonverbal when they're dysregulated. And that's it for me. Thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you found this helpful and informative, and that you have a really wonderful day. Bye for now.